feel to be at the end of the year at absolutely few days to go. I mean, 2 days to go, and we are still talking about Express Entry. It shows how important Express Entry has become for any Canadian aspirant's journey in towards Canada. Uh, 2024 was full of surprises, disappointments, shocks, and frustration as far as Express Entry was concerned. And that's what I have for you today. What I've done is I've collected all the information for throughout the year of 2024 with regards to different draws, different Express Entry data analytics, as well as also for individual provincial draws as well. So for each of the PNP draws, I also have all the data for you. I do not know how much time we will have. I have until 11 a.m. because after that I got to jump on to my consultations, but I will try and wrap this up at as much as I can, and then hopefully leave some time at the end to take some questions, if at all we can do that. Other than that, we will also in the end talk about how 2025 might look like for the Express Entry, because obviously that is so important, right? First off, Express Entry is not going anywhere. I've seen some posts all across different social media platforms that that Express Entry is going to shut, Express Entry is going to close. That is absolutely not the case, at least at this point of time. And even if Express Entry was to close, if that was to happen, right, for whatever the reason might be, then it would simply be replaced with a different system. So Express Entry, for people who still are confused, it's not a program. It's not an immigration stream. It's just a system. It's an electronic system. It's an electronic file management system, just like any CRM that you might know out there. And that's what Express Entry is. And within the Express Entry, then you have the programs that are managed. You have the Federal Skilled Worker Program. Excuse me. You have the Canadian Experience Class Program. You have the Federal Skilled Trade Category Programs. These three programs fall under the Federal High Skilled Immigration Levels Plan information, if you are to review that. And that's how Express Entry is managed or run. Express Entry obviously has its point system, as you already are aware. And the system has been designed to assign each individual who creates their profile based on the information they enter into one of into one of these three programs. And that's how the system runs. Sorry about that. I still have a bit of a bad throat here. So 2024 obviously saw lots of ups and downs, highs and lows as far as Express Entry was concerned. The only issue with Express Entry that we have is that there is no transparency. When I'm saying transparency means at a given point of time, you don't really have much insight as to how the Express Entry pool looks like. All you will have is something of this sort. This is what IRCC will issue after each draw. Sometimes the pool information is current, sometimes it's a few days older. And this is all that you will have. You will have the number of candidates who are in the pool with different scores within this range. You never get to know how many are Canadian Experience Class, how many are Federal Skilled Workers, how many might be who might be eligible in STEM, who might be eligible in this. Obviously, that kind of information will really help a lot of us in its entirety. Okay. Okay, sorry about this. Just wanted to like you know anything, stop fooling around. You know nothing. Of course I know nothing. Why are you even on this stream? Shouldn't you be watching something else for fans page? Probably that will interest you more. So I think you should be out of here. Don't stick around here, man. Go out, do something else, do something better with yourself. Okay. You will always have such kind of individuals who will keep hopping in and keep talking rubbish. So going back to what I was saying, so with Express Entry, the way it looks like, the next year is going to continue the way it is supposed to be, and we don't expect it to go anywhere, at least for in the near future. Right. Starting with the 2024 updates, the way they are. Express Entry, this is a comprehensive 2024 analysis. It goes with the total number of draws and the invitations issued. Total number of draws in 2024 were 52 draws. So the previous year, I think, was about 42, 48. But as we have gone into 2020. So 2023 had roughly, I think, 42 or 48 draws, but the number of invitations was much higher. With this particular year, 2024, what has happened is that though the number of draws are longer, so 52, obviously longer, I mean, higher number of draws, but the number of invitations are only 98,903. And that is primarily because of, as you have seen in the recent past, we have had express entry draws which were only with invitations of 400, 500, and if you were to, if those were to have an extra zero at the end, this number of 98,903 would have been much higher. So that's where it has balanced out. The more number of draws, but the less number of invitations for this year. Just to give you perspective, last year, 2023, we had 110,600 some odd invitations that were issued. Comparatively, we are about 12,000 invitations short for this year. For provincial nominee programs, there were a total number of 14 specific PNP specific draws. Minimum score has gone down to 663. Maximum score went up to 816, and ITAs issued with only PNPs were about 35,000. Still a significant number of invitations. Always bear in mind, excuse me, with each of these invitations, there are a lot of individuals who still decline their ITAs, and therefore they always come back into the pool. And this 35,000 ITAs is, or for that matter, any number of ITAs, is never a reflection of actual number of people who would be who would have gotten their PR, who would have gotten successful. So that is not how it works. You get an ITA, you complete your application, you submit it. A lot of you, for whatever the reason might be, choose to decline the ITA, go back into the pool. A lot of you just don't do anything with your ITA, and you basically get thrown out of the pool and you have to start all over again. So with each ITA, you need to understand that it doesn't mean that many number of people actually received their PR or that their families received a PR. French language proficiency, we had a total of 11 draws. The minimum CRS score dropped. I mean, just dropped like a rock at 336, which really shook everybody up. And I can now say for sure that there are plenty of people who are now studying French diligently. But the maximum CRS score also was quite high, and that went up to 478. But that again is depending on the fact of how many invitations are issued for each draw. The number of ITAs issued total is approximately 17,000 for all the Francophone draws. The Canadian experience class, now this one was interesting. The total number of draws that happened, and these draws are happening since end of May 2024. The minimum CRS score that we went down to was 507, but the maximum score was 547. It actually did shake all of us up, and it happened like about the first draw that happened with CEC, and like, what the hell is going on, right? 547 was with the higher score, or the highest score that happened. The total number of invitations issued, approximately 20,000 for Canadian experience class. Now, and I'll talk about this in a bit once I have completed all the draws. General draws that happened, and obviously that was the initial idea that IRCC had, that they were conducting general draws, which also included the provincial nominee program applicants or aspirants. The total number of draws that happened starting from this year was 9. The minimum CRS score went down to 524. The high stayed at 549. The number of invitations issued, 15,000 under the general category that happened earlier this year, or rather the beginning of the year before May, Jan to May this year. Healthcare, we only had 3 draws this year. CRS score minimum 422, high of 463. Total number of invitations issued, 4,500 under the healthcare. And then under the trade occupations, we had only 2 draws. The number of invitations issued, though, are 3,000. The minimum score went down to 433, higher had gone to 436. So they pretty much stayed pretty stable within the scores as far as trade category draws were concerned. Agriculture and agri-food occupations, you only had 1 draw. I think it was in the month of April. They invited about 1,000 people, or 1,000 ITAs were issued. Score high and low, obviously, with 1 draw remained at 437. STEM occupation, throughout this year of 2024, we were extremely optimistic with at least STEM and healthcare, right? We thought there will be more draws because we had stumbled upon that ATIP notes, which gave an indication that STEM would have like a higher percentage, about 24-25% of the invitations would go towards STEM. However, IRCC obviously had other plans, which they never shared with anybody. And these change of plans happened sometimes in the month of June, July this year, whereby they chose that they would not be proceeding any further with draws under several categories, including STEM occupation draws, including transport, including food and agriculture. They decided they would not be proceeding with any more draws for these categories, and rather deviating all the invitations that would have otherwise been issued in this particular for this particular these category draws. They would deviate it to Canadian experience class. Now, over here, I know the ITAs issued approximately shows 1,000, which is incorrect. I think somebody from my team made an error in that typing. The number of invitations was much higher. I think it was about 4,500. I don't remember the exact number, but the number was higher. But the CRS score was at 491. The earlier STEM category draw was in December 2023, and that score that level had left us at 481 with 6,000 some invitation, 5,000 something. Again, don't remember, but it was a very big draw. So the expectation for STEM category was quite high. As I said, that didn't really materialize because IRCC had a change of plans and they deviated their invitations towards the Canadian experience class rather than continuing with the other category draws. Transport occupations, there was only one, 430 with 1,000 invitations. So the pool and trends and insights for this year was the total profiles in Express Entry pool for 2024 are at this point of time about 221,310. I think that's also here. Yeah, that's where you see that number 221,310. Yeah, that's as per the last pool breakdown that we have. And comparatively, if you want to sort of get a comparative analysis, 2021 you had only 190,000 profile. 2022 it really shot up to 232,000, and then 2023 it came down a bit, tapered off to 216,000. So we are right now at a balanced number of 221,310 as far as the number of Express Entry profiles. Now, shift in priorities, this is what happened in May. IRCC started focusing on the PNPs and CECs instead of general category draws. So there were no more general category draws that happened after May. As I said, there was this change of policy. IRCC started conducting these Canadian experience class draws end of May onwards. And therefore, if that was not part of the original plan of allocating the invitations, so obviously invitations had to come from somewhere. And I think what actually had to give way was the category draws under the STEM, under the transport, and under the under the food and agriculture. General draws didn't become less frequent. It actually just vanished off the bat. Removal of the policy changes that are going to make a huge impact as we move forward, and that would be the removal of CRS points for job offers. Now, at this point of time, this has been announced in December. I mean, obviously, it's just been announced a few days back. This will be effective spring of 2025. Now, for people who are not aware of the Canadian weather and the Canadian seasons, the spring officially runs from March 20 till June 20. 20th of March until 20th of June. That's the period of spring. Specific date has not been identified, which tells us that IRCC does not know when their system, in my opinion, I think that is the reason what is holding them back, that their system, the Express Entry system, for whatever the coding or the technical changes they need to make, it is not ready to accommodate these changes, and therefore they're holding it back. They've given themselves 4 or 5 months to sort of incorporate all these changes so that the system can reflect, or basically not reflect, the points correctly. We'll only come to know somewhere in the month of March, April, May, when exactly these points are no longer in effect. So for the next few months, you have this, but this is going to have a huge impact in the pool, is because there are obviously lots and lots of people who have obtained LMIAs. Now, fraudulently or genuinely, that has always been a bit of a debate, and there's no point of getting into it because you already know that these points are going to go away. So for people who have an LMIA, you only have time until the spring, and after that, obviously, the LMIA points will no longer be applicable. But more importantly, it's the people who were here on the LMIA exempt work permits who are going to impact in a big manner. And these guys primarily happen to be under the intra-company transfer, primarily. Of course, there are the Francophones as well, and then there are also some other categories where also they are able to get closed work permits under the LMIA exempt categories, but it's largely the intra-company transfers, and they work for some big tech companies in Canada. Those are the ones who are going to be impacted in a major manner. Now, they're already impacted with the fact that there are no STEM category draws, right? So these are mainly techies and the tech occupations. So they're already impacted with the fact that there was no STEM category draws. Now they will also be impacted with the fact that there are no more points that will be given to them within the express entry for the arranged employment. At this point of time, there is a huge cloud as far as the arranged employment is concerned. The advisory which came from IRCC after Mark Miller's announcement gave a blanket statement that the arranged employment points will no longer be, people will no longer be eligible for the arranged employment points. It was never clarified whether it would mean only for LMIAs or would also mean for LMIA exempt. Now, again, this might have, if the idea was to remove the fraud for the LMIA. So why should LMIA exempt now pay for that fact, right? So that's one of the issues. But I have a feeling it's more to do with the technical aspect of the express entry system. And that's the reason why the LMIA exempts might also be scapegoated with this whole problem. But again, that clarity is still needed. As of today, you should just assume and course correct and have better options, assuming that LMIA exemption points will also no longer be applicable, and all arranged employment, whether LMIA and LMIA exempt, will not have their points after spring 2025, which we do not know the exact date of this being in effect. So this is as far as the LMIA or the LMIA exempt points are concerned. It is still uncertain. Yes, there is, the blanket statement said arranged employment or job offers. All job offers will lose their points. Again, it wasn't clarified whether it is also for LMIA exempt. It would be quite sad to see LMIA exempt not also losing their points here, but to be very honest, there is nothing much that can be done. And in my opinion, it has only got to do with the express entry system and its technicality. Okay. I've already spoken about express entry. You basically have a gist of what exactly happened as far as express entry is concerned. Now, I can do the PNP analysis as well. I'm not sure if anyone of you is interested. I have got all my PNP data here as well, starting from Prince Edward Islands to Saskatchewan and moving on to Alberta. I think I'm only going to do one province. Alberta is here, British Columbia is here. Actually, the guys in my team, and thank you, Srijit, thank you, Monica. You guys have done a good job putting, I didn't really have the time to do this, so I have to give the credit where it is due. These guys did a good job collating all these different websites for all this information. So obviously, thanks goes where they are deserved. In the interest of saving everybody some time, I'm only going to target one province, which continues to be the most preferred. I wouldn't say preferred, but which tends to have the most advantage for most people out there. So with the majority. Total invitations issued in Ontario throughout 2024, we don't have that number yet. We haven't really actually calculated, but they conducted their targeted draws focusing on streams that had express entry, employer job offer, master's and PhD, graduate streams. These invitations were aimed at specific sectors as health, tech, skilled trades, and priority. Now, actually, I don't have any data there. No, there's nothing much, so can't really, I don't have my numbers here. Yeah, so yeah, let's just skip this one as well. But Ontario was largely successful in the sense that they did complete their target of annual immigration quotas of 21,500. They did issue out thousands and thousands of invitations under the human capital priority stream, under the master's and PhD stream, under the job offer stream, under the international student stream, as well as under the skilled trade and in-demand skills trade stream as well. So largely successful in all its programs, but somewhere they also stopped conducting draws under the human capital priorities. Now, a lot of people are always quite hopeful, quite looking forward to, as far as the Ontario is concerned, for their draws in the sense of specifically for the human capital priorities. Now, if Ontario stops conducting the draw, those people basically don't have much of a choice. Another thing why Ontario continues to be extremely important is that when IRCC stopped with their general draws, right? So general draws also included federal skilled workers. However, federal skilled workers, under no circumstance, without the help of LMIA, federal skilled workers, if they do not have any Canadian connection, of course, they cannot get the scores of 500 plus. It's just theoretically with numbers game, it is not possible. So they definitely need the LMIA. So if now IRCC was to conduct a general draw, but there are no LMIA points, so technically that completely bars all people who are outside Canada, who do not have a Canadian connection, from being able to apply under the Express Entry, other than the category draws. Now, the category draws is the only other option where people who do not have a Canadian connection are still eligible or are able to apply for the for any of the permanent residence programs under the Express Entry. Similarly, Ontario is the only stream or the only program that was still available where people without any Canadian connection or job offer could still make use of the human capital priorities. Alberta also had this program. They had it under the family connection stream. They also had it under the Alberta Accelerated Tech Pathway, but both those programs are also now under the expression of interest. And to be very honest, without Canadian connection, you won't be able to score any higher. BCPNP also tech program, you might still, even if you're outside Canada, you are eligible. However, your scores are not going to be high enough to get through with those programs. So pretty much people who are outside Canada, there is this huge wall now in front of you, which, to be very honest, is going to be very difficult for people outside Canada to make their way in Canada in terms of permanent residence pathways, direct permanent residence pathway. So unless you're an individual who's outside Canada, who has work experience in healthcare or trade, it's, of course, Francophone. Stupid me, silly me. How can I forget that big, huge category there? And of course, if you're not under the Francophone category, you'll have a difficult one or a difficult pathway ahead. The only other option that is left for everybody outside Canada is through the PNP programs. If you're still able to somehow, I do not know how that would happen, but if you're still able to secure a job offer with an employer, then that might still be an option available somehow. Again, as I said, for PNP programs, as we move into 2025, that quotas have been slashed by 50 to 60%, which basically means there will be a lot of pressure on the PNPs as we move forward. So getting a job offer and then making your way in for people outside Canada for 2025, it is looking extremely difficult. So if you're in a general category, even if you're inside Canada, but let's say you are here in Canada on an owner-operator program, right? Or you're here in Canada on an ICT work permit where you transferred yourself as a senior member of the staff, and you are in Canada. You did get 200 points for your job offer. However, because you are not eligible for the Canadian experience class, since your work experience doesn't count, therefore, this is going to make it very, very difficult, specifically after the points are also taken away. So collectively, it's going to be an in-Canada focus year as far as 2025 is concerned. And let's talk about in-Canada focus. Now, in-Canada focus, brilliant, I would say. I mean, that is also another way of converting the temporary residents into permanent residents. And off the bat, I have to sort of say that there will be no TR to PR program. Somehow, some of you are still living under that rainbow, expecting to find that TR to PR invitation at the end of the rainbow. I do not know why you would think so. Wake up and smell the coffee, because IRCC is in no mood to give it off easily. Somehow, I think people had brain fade in 2022 when the TR to PR program came and when that 75 CRS score came. I think they had serious brain fade. They made those decisions without realizing the consequences and the impact it will have. And now all of us together, I mean, everybody out there are actually bearing that consequences of those poor decisions that were made, TR to PR and that 75 CRS, and of course that spate of low CRS score draws that were conducted. Anyways, now that we are here, at the crux of entering into 2025. How does it look like 2025 Express Entry wise? Now, first, again, I'm just repeating, Express Entry is not going anywhere. It's not closing. It's not shutting down. Conservatives, if they come to power, when they come to power, not if, but when they come to power, they are not closing down Express Entry. There is no such chatter. At least I haven't heard of anything of that sort. This current system is still running strong, of course, except for the few glitches that we continue to have. And if and when Express Entry system does close, there would be a replacement system that would just take over. So don't have to be worried about where this will go. Yes, Express Entry system might need a bit of an overhaul in terms of how the points are distributed and calculated, but then that is a legislative change, because a minister cannot simply come back and say, you cannot get points for all of these factors, or let's change the point distribution, because it's all ingrained in the IRPA and IRPA. which is the Immigration Refugee Protection Act and Regulation. So there will have to be some lot of legislative changes if these have to be incorporated. Not happening anytime soon. So let's rest assured that this is not going anywhere. Now, as far as 2025 is concerned, we all know the immigration levels plan are quite optimistic. We have more than 120,000 being assigned to federal high skilled, which basically tells you that the number has actually gone up, not down, as far as the express entry is concerned. We were all expecting that those numbers will be slashed. Thankfully, that did not happen. That number actually stayed intact, rather increased. The numbers that has gone down is with the PNP quotas being slashed by 50 to 60%. New category introduced under the immigration levels plan was the in Canada focus. Now, in Canada focus is primarily meant to give advantage to people in Canada who have the Canadian experience. Now, as one of the ATIP notes that were obtained and IRCC clarified in that was that they do understand that there are some Canadian experience class people who might not be in Canada, but that percentage or that number is so small that at this point of time, they would simply just concentrate on Canadian experience class throughout and not really be worried about whether they are inside Canada or outside Canada. So if you're outside Canada, but still eligible in Canadian experience class, at this point of time, at least right now, we can be at peace as far as 2025 is concerned, because you now have a category under the in Canada focus assigning 82,000 spots. The only issue here is that a lot of these 82,000 spots might already have been taken. Now, when I'm saying that, what I mean is that all the invitations that were being issued in the later half of 2024 would actually account for those people who will become permanent residents after having received those invitations. They will all account towards the 2025 quota. So, for example, if you didn't understand what I just said, if you received your invitation under the Canadian experience class in September, October, November, December, then all of you would be completing your application. And by the time it will be approved, you obviously will be in 2025. And therefore, you will be accounted towards the 2025 quotas. And a lot of these invitations that have been issued are towards this. And therefore, it is understood that the slowdown that happened towards the end of the year in Express Entry with Canadian experience class draws, and you might also continue to see that slowdown in Jan and Feb. Again, depending on the same ATIP notes, this would only be to balance out the number of invitations that have already been issued versus what will be issued in 2025. Because at the time the decision of how many draws and when the invitations will be issued was being made, the immigration levels plan had not been finalized. They had finalized the fact that there will be an in-Canada focus, but what will be that number? That number still had to be balanced out. That wasn't finalized. And therefore, the number of draws, because these are apparently they're already been scheduled, and that is how they are conducted. So as per that, because they were not aware of what the immigration levels plan is going to be at that point of time, the number, and therefore they had scheduled the draws to be of low number, and that's what we saw in November and December, and probably again, fingers crossed if we see it otherwise. But if those ATIP notes are to be followed through, or if we review those notes, I don't have a copy of those with me right now. I will come back and try and post a copy of it on the Twitter, on the Facebook, as well as on the Instagram as well, so you can take a look. So if excuse me, if those are to be believed, then Jan Feb could also have a low ITA kind of a draw. However, with the fact of 82,880, that is, I think, approximately the number that has been aligned or assigned to the in-Canada focus, the one thing that you can expect is that the CEC, PNP, CEC kind of draws will continue. As I said, I don't expect at this point of time a general draw. They might squeeze one through just to sort of clear out any people who might be in Canada with a high CRS score. They might squeeze one through. Again, there is absolutely no guarantee that can never happen. But the chances or the likelihood of a general draw or an FSW draw or the draw that gives advantage to people outside Canada, very, very unlikely for that happen. Now, as we move forward within this year of 2025, the category draws, now that is another big one that people are quite concerned about, because the immigration levels plan of 2025 did not indicate anything to do with any other category except healthcare, trade, francophone. These were the only three categories that were targeted, that were mentioned. And by simply skipping the other categories, they probably have made it clear that they may not be concentrating on any of those other categories. Now, Why? I don't know the answer to that. Of course, there are people, there are analysts, there are experts apparently who make those kind of decisions based on the labor market priorities. And the categories will be announced somewhere. You will see that information coming through somewhere in February after the first sitting of the parliament. You will see that information coming through. Usually by the first week of February, you should see the new categories. And if there are any changes in the knock code within the healthcare and trade categories, all that information will be available by February. But at this point of time, you should assume that it's end of the line for STEM, transport, and agriculture, at least for this point of time, until and unless we have more clarity on this aspect. So that's pretty much as far as the categories are concerned. There is an allocation for 40,000 spots, that is for francophone, healthcare, and trade. I believe majority of this still will go to the healthcare categories, and remainder would go towards the healthcare and trade. Well, if I was you, I would still believe there is a chance. And if I could then gain work experience within the healthcare or trade occupations, you could still squeeze yourself through if that's what you were looking to do. But you have to always be pragmatic. You have to always be looking out for where the changes are, then course correct or pivot depending on how the changes are happening. And those are the people who actually will make it through as far as this year is concerned. CRS scores. Now, that is another big one, right? Quickly, let's take a look at this one. It says here that the biggest concentration obviously continues to be, a large concentration continues to be between 451 and 500, and that's 63,000 people. But as of today, our concern is 501 to 600. That's where we are looking at right now. 19,885. That is the number of people that were in the pool with 501 plus score as of the 16th of December. That was the date, I think. Yes, 16th of December was the date. And as of this date, you had these number of people. Now, with these number of people, and of course, we are right now on the 29th of December. So this number pretty much would have gone up by a couple of thousand, at least in my opinion. And this is a scary number. When I'm saying this is a scary number, why? Because as much as we all want to believe that there are these LMIA people who are in this group, and I'm sure there are quite a few who might be the ones who have an LMIA. There are equally those number as well who have a master's degree in Canada, who have studied a diploma program in Canada, but also have a bachelor's degree. They also have work experience back in home country. They have work experience in Canada, and they are obviously CLB 9, 10. They have siblings. And of course, there could be some francophones there as well, a mix of francophones as well. So there's a mix of permutation and combination of different kinds of profiles who can actually gain points more than 500. So this number, when you are looking at now, in my opinion, this could be very well close to 21,000 plus profiles at a score of 501 at this point of time. When IRCC starts conducting a draw, now again, if that ATIP notes is to be believed, and with those ATIP notes, if they conduct only a small size draw, at least for Jan-Feb, I hope not, I really, really hope not, but if they do, then that basically means this number is will continue to grow. And if it continues to grow, it basically means that as and when they do start conducting the draws, it will take a lot of time. Because you don't expect IRCC to conduct a draw of 20,000 people. I mean, yes, there is precedence of them being really, really silly about certain draws, but at this point of time, at least it doesn't look like they are going to be conducting any such large draws. Even if they do actually a 5,000 kind of a draw, I'll be quite happy to see that. But I'll have to sort of tread with caution as far as how many ITAs they could issue. You're looking more at, they might again start small, 3,000 kind of a draw, 3,000, 3,500, and then probably go up to 4 and 5 as and how we gather steam for the 2025. But with those kind of draws, with that numbers being small, how many people will get cleared out of this 501 pool again remains a question. Because the pool continues to get replenished, how many people are continuing to enter the pool? Now, the fact is that IRCC has chosen to give it until spring account for people without LMIs, that also tells you a lot of people will continue to jump into the pool with the LMIs, right? That also, so it doesn't help. They are removing the points, yes, but at the same point of time, they are front loading it with profiles who might be in a desperate hope to get into the pool before the points are taken away. So I would have been happier had they sort of said, okay, no more points effective 23rd of December. And that would have been more effective, and we would have had a better sight of the pool. However, that obviously there are challenges, they cannot do it. So in my opinion, this pool of 21,000 that it should be at this point of time is not going to get cleared out like this. It will take time. And what will matter the most at that point of time is how many profiles are getting added into the pool, how is it getting replenished, how quickly is it getting replenished, and that's where it will matter the most. Do I expect 500s to be cleared? Well, entire 2024, I was quite hopeful. If it had not been for IRCC playing a start-stop game with the draws, I was quite sure that the 500s would have been cleared out. At least we came out to 507, right? All it needed were 2 more draws from there and we would have been through with 500s. But they didn't do that. They put a stop in it. And therefore, as we go into 2025, the same principle will continue. If IRCC will conduct a regular, consistent draw, which you can anticipate and expect on a regular basis, you should see 500s being cleared out simply because you have 82,000 spots. And of course, in the year 2026, the following year, also you have the in-Canada focus. So you should have the continuity of the in-Canada focus, and therefore you should see the 500s being cleared out. When that may happen, how soon that will happen, I don't know. There is no way to look into this clouded crystal ball to say when that would happen, and that is only because the lack of consistency that has been seen with IRCC, and we also do not know how many invitations they would issue per draw. However, at least the first quarter should give us a very good understanding of which way we are heading. And if once the LMIA points are indeed removed, and that is what would happen towards the end of the first quarter, this glimpse of 501 to 600 would turn out to be a bit better for sure. And yeah, that would tell you how quickly you can then see the scores dropping or plummeting to 500 and then hopefully below 500. So this is my opinion and analysis as far as how the Express Entry pool is looking like and how it will play out for the year of 2025. I'm not going to go far ahead into 2025. It's very difficult to sort of be doing that. As long as we can see the first quarter through, and as long as we can see these points being removed and then a new Express Entry pool after the points are removed, we would be in a much better position to then speculate how the remainder of the 3 quarters might look like. That's all I have for you guys as of today. Very quickly going to take these 5 questions. Please do not do any more super chats before I scoot off because I just have 5 more minutes to go. Submitted my PR confirmation documents. How long will it take? Hopefully by early next year. That's when you can expect your ECO PR. As flag polling is cancelled, can a visitor get closed work permit? Yes, you can after you apply online from outside Canada as a work permit. What could the French draw of scores in 2025 be? I do not know. It will all depend on the number of invitation and the frequency of draws. IRCC application tracker shows COPR document number. The COPR is not issued. Should I consider myself a permanent resident? Absolutely not. You are not a permanent resident until a COPR has been issued to you, and we expect those COPRs should start coming through by early January. What is the country of origin in citizenship application? Indian citizens, US resident before moving to Canada on work permit. Now PR applying citizen. What is the country of origin in citizen? Well, wherever you belong to. I mean, what are your roots? Where were you born? What was your original country of citizenship? That is what your country of origin would be. That, I think, should bring us to the end of today's stream. Thank you so much, guys. I wish each and every one of you a very happy new year. May this new year bring all of us the joys and fulfill all our goals that we are really hoping to accomplish. And by that, take care, all the best, and I shall see you in the new year.